Hello, my name is Joe Dura. I'm from Pell City, Alabama. I am now 84 years old. 50 years ago, close to that, I experienced the tornado that came through Pell City, Alabama. I was a 34-year-old businessman, had an auto parts store, and it happened, I believe it was on a Friday, if I'm not mistaken, around a little after 4 o'clock. And at that particular time, I had been in business for 13 years in Pell City. All total, I've been in business about 65 years in Pell City. We didn't have weather reports like we have in today's world, and we had no knowledge that it was coming through like it was. So routinely, I went up to the courthouse to register some property to have it assessed that I had bought. And I was in the courthouse when it happened, but my partner and his son that was in the building when it came, we had one metal desk in the office, and they got under that metal desk. And if I had been there, there wouldn't have been a room for three. Just two people got under that desk, and the whole building collapsed. The whole roof just come down on everything that was in it, kind of capturing the merchandise, but it also captured two souls under a desk. At the courthouse, I was the only man that was at the counter, and the rest of the ladies that was there, I remember Miss Sarah Bell. She always called me her tornado buddy after that. And we could see the jail from the windows of the courthouse. I've heard people say that when you hear a tornado coming, it sounds like a train. Well, I got news for you. It's not the woo, 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 woo of the whistle. It's the clackety, clackety, clackety of the debris that's floating around and hitting the windows and all of that. That's where the sound comes in, like a train. And this thing hit real hard. I don't know why, but I made all those women lay down under their desk in the courthouse. But one lady decided she would leave because she was scared. And she got to the basement door, which was all glass, and it just exploded right there in front of her. It didn't injure her or anything, but her eyes got real big, and she came right back up and laid down too. It didn't last all that long, and when it was over, we could see the jail out there, but we saw a Greyhound bus laying sideways in the jail yard. And the whole town was in disarray. And we saw trees down, we saw all that. And I wondered about my wife and children at home. I live close to Stimley Bridge on Cedar Lane in Cropwell. And they didn't even know what happened down there, thank God. I finally made my way back over to my business, and I found the two people under the metal desk. The whole roof had cracked, had fell in, and there were still power lines out switching like that and making sparks, touching one of our delivery trucks. As a matter of fact, that the delivery truck didn't have a place on it that didn't have a dent in it, and a place where power lines had burned it. All of our neighbors came, cut the roof away, got all the parts that was left. They were all just about out of the boxes and everything, and they took them up and piled them in the middle of the floor of the new building. We were just thankful to the Lord that we had this extra building ready. It wasn't long till my wife and kids came up and told me they were safe, and I was so glad of that. My wife's from Raglan, and people from Raglan said, "We got some of your council checks up here. if you want them back. I said, no, we don't need them. And the tornado was headed that way. At that time, I went to the Methodist church, and it took the roof, half the roof off of the Methodist church, which is only 2 blocks away from my business there. And it was a devastating storm, but I don't think anybody was killed in Pell City. Now, maybe 1 or 2 injured, but we were very fortunate and lucky that we weren't harmed. The storm that came, it did a lot of damage around town, but everybody just helped each other and worked together, and we got over that. And it was a catastrophe for sure, but it could have been a lot worse, so we're thankful for that.
The first thing I remember about the January tornado so many years ago was coming home from school. The air seemed really funny. There was a different feeling outside, and I had 2 kids, and one of them was just about 1.5 years old, and I took him upstairs in the house to feed him in front of the television where my daughter was watching Mr. Rogers. That was a really stupid move, but back then we didn't know so much about tornadoes as we know today. The tornado came. I heard it go over my house in Eden. It scared me, but we had no damage. Trees were blown around, just limbs down. And it was not long before my husband came home, and there had been a train across the track in Eden, and he could not get home, so he ran from the time he hit the railroad track. He ran all the way to the house. He said that a tornado had hit downtown and that it was devastating, and that I needed to come with him, and we were going to go to my sister and brother-in-law's house across a little private lake that we lived on. We did that, and we stayed there until late into the night. We didn't know about tornadoes. We had no idea that the tornado was gone, it wouldn't be back, there was nothing else to be scared of. We stayed in their basement for hours and hours. My husband, meanwhile, and his brother went downtown with chainsaws and began to help clean the streets and make way for people to get in to do rescue work. After that point, I was a teacher at the junior high school. It was behind where the SEPA Center is now. The next day, of course, there was no school. The roof had been completely blown off the junior high gym, and the air conditioners were sitting out in the parking lot that had come from atop the buildings, and there was great damage to the main building. I don't remember exactly how many days it was that we did not have school, but it was a number of days. And after that time, they arranged for us to meet our classes in various places around town. I remember that the churches were called in to provide space for the meetings. Our lunchroom in the basement of the building was not damaged, and many classes were held in the lunchroom. And you can imagine the din of noise there was when the students were all in there at one time, and there was a lot going on, a lot of teaching going on, and we had to try to stay on topic with what we were going to talk about that day. It was really an interesting time. We all learned to work together. We didn't have any hot lunches for a long time, and we ate bag lunches. Every day, the lunchroom ladies would come in, and they'd close the door to the kitchen right beside the lunchroom where we were teaching, and they would work on the lunches for us to have for that day. One of the things I remember the most about the junior high school was going in and seeing the floor in the gym. The floor looked like an ocean. It was rolling. All of that hardwood had been wet, and it all rolled. I've just never seen anything like it. But it took a long time for us to get back into position and for things to go to working again. Just felt very fortunate that we didn't have any major damage to the house, to our property. It just did a lot of damage to Pell City. Red's Menswear, I remember, was on 231, and it was pretty much demolished and closed. It was spread all over town. I think probably some of it was found in Ragland. And another thing I really remember is going down into the Mill Village, and somebody had said that a pine needle could go through a tree with the winds that the tornado put out. So I think that there was a pine needle through a tree. It looked like it. If not, there were 2 pine needles, one on one side and one on the other. And it was over. It was over as fast as it came.
I'm Cindy Luby. the third generation owner of Pell City Flower and Gift Shop. And what I remember about this tornado is that we had a beautiful glass roof on our greenhouse made of glass window panes. The tornado picked the roof up and sat it down crooked on top without breaking anything. Well, we lost it anyway because we couldn't repair it. But also, in this 75 tornado, my grandmother, who lived on 28th Street, lost her house. The Mennonites rebuilt it for her later on, and she had a lot of respect for the Mennonites because back then a lot of people did not have insurance on their homes. They rebuilt her a nice little house, and it's still sitting there on 28th Street. You can see it from 231. Behind what used to be Discount Auto. It's the only house on the block that looks different from the others.